This is a story almost no one knows. A forgotten chapter of history where fire met whiskey and the streets of a great city turned into rivers of burning alcohol. It's one of the strangest disasters the world has ever seen, and yet you won't find it in most history books. This is the Lost Chapters. In the late 19th century, Dublin was a bustling city, full of narrow cobblestone streets, gas lamps, horse-drawn carts, and the endless aroma of malt from its distilleries. Whiskey wasn't just a drink in Ireland. It was an industry, a source of pride, and an economic lifeline. On the night of June 18th, 1875, that pride turned into a nightmare. In the working-class neighborhood of the Liberties, one of Dublin's many bonded warehouses where whiskey was stored caught fire. The flames spread rapidly through the wooden rafters and the stacked barrels. The heat was so intense that iron bands burst off the casks, and whiskey began to pour onto the streets in torrents. What started as a warehouse fire quickly transformed into something no one had ever seen before. Rivers of burning alcohol racing down the streets of Dublin. The flames reflected off the cobblestones, and thick black smoke rose into the night sky. But the strangest part wasn't just the fire, it was how people reacted to it.
When the whiskey hit the streets, panic erupted. At first, people ran from the flames. Mothers grabbed children. Men tried to pull carts away. Horses kicked against their reins. The Liberties was a tightly packed district with narrow alleys and wooden homes standing shoulder to shoulder. If the fire jumped too far, it could consume the entire neighborhood. The Dublin Fire Brigade was alerted quickly. Captain James Robert Ingram, a veteran of many blazes, rushed his men into action. But as soon as they arrived, they realized this was no ordinary fire. The flames weren't confined to buildings, they were moving. Entire streets were rivers of flame, twisting and curling as whiskey spread downhill. The fire almost seemed alive, chasing anything in its path. Ingram ordered his men to bring out the hoses. Water thundered from the nozzles, striking the flames. But the result horrified everyone. The whiskey floated on top of the water, spreading the fire farther and faster. Flames leapt into doorways, into windows, into roofs. Buckets of water thrown by terrified citizens did the same, turning small blazes into infernos. The fire brigade was forced to change tactics. Ingram barked orders: no water, sand, sand and earth. Dubliners looked on in confusion as men scrambled not with hoses, but with shovels. Loads of sand were dumped across the fiery whiskey streams, trying to smother them. When sand ran low, Ingram ordered something even stranger: horse manure. Tons of manure swept from stables was shoveled into the streets. It was filthy, it stank, but it worked. Slowly, the glowing rivers were absorbed and choked out. But while the firefighters fought the flames with dirt, another kind of chaos was breaking out in the streets. Chaos not caused by panic, but by temptation.
Most people run from fire, but Dubliners that night did something very different. As the barrels exploded and whiskey gushed down the streets, locals realized something. This was free drink.
Hundreds of gallons of the finest Irish whiskey were flowing through their neighborhood, and instead of fleeing, many people stayed to claim their share. Eyewitnesses described scenes that bordered on madness. Men and women rushed out of their homes with buckets, jugs, pots, even boots to scoop up the fiery liquid. Some tried to douse the flames with coats, only to wring the alcohol in containers for drinking. Children splashed barefoot through gutters filled with burning liquor. In some streets, men fell to their knees, cupping their hands to drink straight from the flow. But this wasn't ordinary whiskey. It was raw, burning, contaminated by debris, wood, and sewage from the gutters. Yet desperation and drunken glee overpowered caution. Reports later said that many of the dead were not burned, but poisoned. They had drunk too much, too quickly. Some collapsed in alleys, unconscious before the night was over. A local priest recalled in horror that bodies were found the next morning with faces stained from drink, not smoke. While the fire brigade struggled against rivers of flame, the people of Dublin turned the disaster into a wild street festival of intoxication. The night was lit by fire and fueled by whiskey, and the line between survival and celebration blurred. As the crowd drank, the firefighters fought. Captain Ingram knew he was running out of time. If the whiskey continued flowing unchecked, it could ignite more warehouses, more homes, and spread beyond the Liberties into the heart of Dublin. His strategy, though unorthodox, began to work. Sand was scarce, but horse manure was plentiful. The Liberties was home to stables, carts, and markets. Mountains of manure were shoveled into the streets, piled against doorways, dumped across gutters. The sight was grotesque, flames hissing and sputtering as they met heaps of steaming filth. The smell was worse, a choking mixture of smoke, alcohol, and dung that clung to the air for days afterward. But it was effective. Slowly, block by block, the firefighters choked the flaming rivers into silence. Some witnesses mocked them, shouting that Dublin's Fire Brigade had fought whiskey with horse dung. Yet their strange tactic saved hundreds of homes. By dawn, the worst was over. Streets were blackened, homes destroyed, and families left in shock. The fire had been one of the strangest Dublin had ever seen, but it could have been much worse. The Liberties was scarred, but not erased. When the flames finally died, Dublin awoke to devastation and scandal. 13 people were dead, yet none of them had perished by fire. Every death was attributed to alcohol poisoning. Men had drunk themselves unconscious and never awoke. Others collapsed in the streets, suffocated by fumes mixed with strong liquor. Not a single corpse bore burns. For the press, the story was irresistible. Dublin newspapers thundered about drunkenness and shame. The Irish Times declared it a disgrace, saying, "A more fearful spectacle of inebriety has not been witnessed for a long time." For priests, it was proof of moral decay. The disaster was not just a fire. It was a cautionary tale. Economically, the losses were staggering. Warehouses worth thousands of pounds were destroyed. Families lost homes and possessions. Insurance disputes raged. And yet, in taverns and backrooms, the night became legend. Some laughed about it, calling it the night whiskey fought back. Others mourned the humiliating image it gave of Dubliners to the world. For firefighters, it was a grim victory. They had stopped the fire without losing the entire district. but they could not stop people from drinking themselves to death. Unlike the Great Fire of London or Chicago, Dublin's whiskey fire faded quickly from public memory. It was too bizarre, too embarrassing to become a tale of heroism. Instead, it lingered as a dark joke, a moral lesson about temptation. But among firefighters, it became legend. Captain Ingram's improvisation was hailed as genius. Training manuals cited his methods as proof that innovation mattered more than equipment. Ingram himself was celebrated as a hero. His men had risked their lives not just against flames, but against rivers of explosive alcohol. In Dublin itself, the fire was remembered locally, whispered in pubs, and retold as part of neighborhood folklore. But outside Ireland, the tale nearly vanished. Unlike battles, famines, or revolutions, it did not fit the neat categories of history. It was strange, shameful, and surreal. Today, historians rediscover it occasionally, piecing together newspaper clippings and eyewitness reports. Tour guides tell visitors about the night the streets ran with whiskey. But for most of the world, it remains unknown, a lost chapter in history.
The Great Whiskey Fire of 1875 was unlike any other disaster. It was not caused by war or earthquake, but by accident. It did not destroy thousands, but it revealed something profound about human nature. In the face of catastrophe, some flee, some fight, and some drink. Rivers of burning whiskey are hard to imagine today. Streets glowing with fire, people scooping liquor from gutters, firefighters shoveling manure into the flames. It sounds like a folk tale, yet it happened, and it is recorded in Dublin's history. Perhaps that is why it is forgotten. It doesn't fit the narratives we prefer. Disasters are supposed to be tragic, noble, or epic. The whiskey fire was absurd, ironic, almost comic, yet deadly all the same. For those who lived through it, it was unforgettable. For the rest of the world, it was erased. Until now.
If you enjoyed this story, one of history's strangest and most forgotten disasters, subscribe to The Lost Chapters, because the past is full of stories like this waiting to be rediscovered. And once you've heard them, you'll never look at history the same way again.